The polished marble floors of the Galaxy Council headquarters reflected the myriad stars visible through the massive, transparent dome overhead. Commander Alan Wright walked with measured steps, his Terran Federation uniform crisp, despite the 18-hour journey from Earth. 75 years had passed since humanity joined the Council, and still, they were treated as newcomers, as lesser beings, who should be grateful merely to have a seat at the table. The central chamber loomed ahead, its massive doors carved from the crystalline wood of the ancient dryad forests of Epsilon Eridani. Behind those doors sat the representatives of over 200 civilizations, some that had been traveling the stars when humans were still daubing paint on cave walls. Alan straightened his shoulders. Today might be different. It had to be. "Commander Wright, a moment, please." Alan turned to see Samantha Clark, his communications officer, hurrying toward him. Her usual composed demeanor seemed strained, her dark eyes intense. "The President wants to speak with you before you enter," she said, offering him a secure comm device. Alan nodded, taking the device and stepping aside into a small alcove. President Heather Adams's face appeared on the screen, her expression grave. "Commander, I've just received intelligence that the Council plans another postponement on our voting rights petition," she said, without preamble. 7 decades of contributing our technology, our resources, our people, and still they consider us developing. Alan's jaw tightened. "Madam President, with all due respect, we've been through this cycle 17 times now. Perhaps it's time we consider Protocol Exodus," she finished for him, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Alan froze. Protocol Exodus had been developed 5 years ago as a contingency plan considered so extreme that its very existence was classified at the highest levels. It called for Earth's complete withdrawal from all galactic agreements, the immediate recall of all human-developed technology currently deployed throughout Council space, and the establishment of independent relations with willing species outside the Council framework. "Are you certain, Madam President?" he asked, his voice equally quiet. "Once initiated, there's no going back." The President's eyes were steel. "I've consulted with the Joint Chiefs, the Cabinet, and representatives from all Earth nations. The vote was unanimous. We've given them 75 years of good faith. Our patience is exhausted." Alan glanced at the Council chamber doors. "They'll retaliate. The Carney fleet alone could. We've prepared for that contingency as well. Project Artemis is ready for deployment if necessary." Alan's heart skipped a beat. Artemis was theoretical a non-lethal weapon system, so advanced that most Council species would consider it impossible. "Your authorization codes are being transmitted to your secure systems now," President Adams continued. "The choice of exact timing is yours, Commander. You're there. You'll know the right moment. Earth stands behind you." The communication ended, leaving Alan standing in silence, the weight of humanity's future suddenly heavy on his shoulders. He handed the device back to Samantha, whose questioning look he answered with a single nod. "Prepare the Protocol Exodus packages," he said quietly, "and alert Captain Reynolds on the Defiance to move to standby status near Illyrin." Samantha's eyes widened, but her training held. "Yes, Commander. How soon?" "During today's session, when I give the signal." "They won't take this lightly," she warned. Alan's expression hardened. "Neither do we." The doors to the Council chamber parted as Alan approached. Inside the vast circular room ascended several hundred meters with curved tiers of seating, arranged to give each delegation a clear view of the central speaking platform. The air was carefully maintained at a compromised temperature and composition that allowed most species to function without environmental suits, though several delegations still required specialized equipment. Alan took his seat at the Earth station, one of the furthest from the center, and lacking the ornate embellishments of the elder race's positions. The chamber hummed with dozens of languages translation devices, creating a background murmur that never quite ceased. The ceremonial chimes rang, signaling the start of the session. The council chair, a Drexian elder, whose age was measured in centuries, rose from his elevated position. The 247th session of the Galactic Council is now in progress. The elder announced his translator, converting his melodious native tongue to the common trade language. We begin with the status of the Vega Prime reconstruction. Alan listened with growing frustration as the council methodically worked through its agenda. Earth's petition for full voting rights, scheduled for consideration after 17 previous postponements, was predictably near the end. Hours passed as disputes between ancient rivals were arbitrated, trade agreements reviewed, and scientific missions authorized. Finally, as the artificial day cycle of the station began to wane, the Drexian elder announced, "We now turn to Petition 7E, the Terran Federation application for full council voting privileges." Alan rose, stepping forward to the speaker's platform in the center of the chamber. He felt the subtle shift in the room, the slight dimming of attention, the almost imperceptible turning away of several elder race representatives. They had already decided. "Honorable Chair, esteemed representatives," Alan began, his voice strong and clear. "The Terran Federation comes before you for the 18th time to request recognition of our full membership rights within this council. For 75 years, humanity has contributed to galactic peace and prosperity. Our quantum stabilization technology has made faster-than-light communication reliable across council space. Our medical advances have saved billions of lives across a dozen species. Our artificial intelligence protocols have resolved translation issues that plagued interspecies communication for centuries." He paused, looking around the chamber. Some were listening attentively, but many, particularly the elder races, displayed the polite disinterest of those who had already made up their minds. "Despite these contributions," Alan continued, "we remain classified as a developing species, denied the full voting rights that would allow us to participate equally in decisions affecting all our futures. We ask today, what further evidence of our civilization's maturity does this council require?" The Valyrian ambassador, a tall, slender figure with iridescent skin, rose from his seat. "The council acknowledges Terran contributions, Commander Wright. However, in the greater context of galactic history, 75 years is barely a moment. Many species have waited centuries before being granted full voting privileges. The Council's traditions exist for good reason." Alan nodded slowly. "And how long did Valyria wait, Ambassador?" "If I recall correctly, your world was granted full voting rights within 16 years of first contact." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Valyrian skin flushed a deeper blue. "Circumstances were different. The political situation at that time was that your civilization had technology the Council wanted." Alan interrupted, his patience fraying. "Just as they wanted ours. The difference is that we were willing to share our advances openly while you negotiated for privilege in return." The Drexian elder's voice cut through the rising whispers. "Commander Wright, such accusations are inappropriate in these chambers. The Council's decisions on membership status are made according to many factors, not merely technological development." "Indeed," Alan's voice was dangerously quiet now. "Then perhaps the Council would be willing to provide clear, objective criteria for full membership. After 18 petitions, we have yet to receive any specific benchmarks we must meet." The chamber fell silent. The elder races exchanged glances. "The Council requires time to deliberate on the appropriate metrics for the Terran case," the Drexian said finally. "We propose a subcommittee be formed to—" "No," Alan said, the single word, cutting like a blade through the chamber's diplomatic atmosphere. The elder blinked his four eyes in sequence, a sign of surprise. "Excuse me. No more subcommittees. No more deliberations. No more delays." Alan reached into his pocket and withdrew a small device, holding it up for all to see. It was simple, a metallic cylinder with a single button. "What is the meaning of this?" the Drexian demanded. "This, Honorable Chair, is humanity's response to 75 years of patronizing delays." Alan pressed the button. Throughout the chamber, the personal devices of Council representatives began chiming with urgent alerts. The vast information screens that lined the walls flickered, then displayed emergency notifications from across Council space. "What have you done?" the Valyrian ambassador demanded, rising from his seat as his own device flashed with increasingly frantic messages. Alan stood tall on the platform, his voice carrying to every corner of the suddenly chaotic chamber. As of this moment, the Terran Federation formally withdraws from all agreements, treaties, and associations with the Galactic Council. The chamber erupted in shouts and exclamations. Alan continued, raising his voice above the tumult. All human-developed technologies currently deployed in Council space are being recalled or remotely deactivated. This includes quantum stabilization cores in your communication relays, medical diagnostic systems in your hospitals, adaptive translation algorithms in your universal translators, and security protocols in your banking networks. The Drexian elder rose to his full height, his ceremonial robes billowing. "This is outrageous. You cannot simply—" "We can and we have," Alan interrupted. "Every technology we shared came with licensing agreements that you all signed, agreements that give us the right to revoke access in certain circumstances. Paragraph 47B specifically allows for complete withdrawal in cases where Earth's representatives determine that continued participation in the Council is no longer in humanity's best interests." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Council had grown so dependent on human technology over the past 75 years that its sudden removal would cause chaos throughout civilized space. "You're bluffing," the Valyrian said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Your systems are integrated throughout Council infrastructure. Removing them would cause as much damage to Earth's interests as to ours." Alan smiled thinly. "We've been preparing for this possibility for years, Ambassador. Human colonies and interests have already been quietly transitioning to independent systems. We are prepared for the disruption. Are you?" As if to punctuate his words, the lights in the chamber flickered briefly, a visible reminder of how deeply human technology was embedded in the Council's operations. "This is nothing short of extortion." The Carney representative growled, his reptilian features contorted in anger. "The Carney Imperium will not stand for such threats." "This is not a negotiation," Alan replied calmly. "This is notification. Earth is withdrawing from the Council effective immediately. Any species or worlds that wish to establish bilateral relations with the Terran Federation are welcome to contact our diplomatic corps directly." He turned to leave the platform, but the Drexian elder's voice stopped him. "Commander Wright, surely we can discuss this reasonably. A complete withdrawal benefits no one. Perhaps an emergency review of your voting status." Alan turned back. "You've had 75 years to review our status, Elder. 75 years during which humanity has proved its worth to this Council 1,000 times over. Your offer comes too late. And if we were to grant full voting rights immediately," the elder pressed. For a moment, the chamber hung in breathless anticipation. Alan looked around at the faces and forms of the assembled representatives, some angry, some frightened, some calculating. "That opportunity has passed," he said finally. "The Terran Federation will now forge its own path. Those who wish to walk it with us as equals are welcome. The rest of you will need to adapt to a galaxy without Earth support." With that, Alan stepped down from the platform and walked steadily toward the exit. Behind him, the chamber descended into chaos, as representatives frantically communicated with their homeworlds, trying to assess the damage already unfolding. Samantha met him at the doors, her expression a mixture of apprehension and pride. "It's done," she said simply. "Protocol Exodus is fully activated. All Earth ships are withdrawing from Council space. The technology recalls are proceeding according to plan." Alan nodded, feeling the weight of what he had just done. "And Artemis?" "Captain Reynolds reports the Defiance is in position near Illyrin. They're monitoring Carney fleet movements." "Good. They'll be the first to test us." Alan squared his shoulders. "Let's get back to our ship. We've just changed the course of galactic history, and there's much work to be done." As they walked through the corridors of the Council station, Alan could already see the effects beginning. The usually flawless environmental systems showed subtle signs of strain, temperature fluctuations, Brief power hesitations. Council security personnel watched them pass with uncertain eyes, clearly having received no orders on how to respond to Earth's unprecedented action. The galaxy would never be the same again, and humanity would finally take its rightful place among the stars, not as supplicants, but as equals. Across Council space, chaos erupted as human technology went dormant. On the vast trade hub of Vega Prime, the quantum communication relays that had enabled instantaneous galactic communication for decades suddenly faltered and died, leaving only the older, much slower, light-speed systems operational. Merchants found themselves unable to process transactions as the banking security algorithms developed on Earth shut down, freezing trillions in assets. In the Central Galactic Bank on Proxima Centauri, Director Gregory Peterson watched from his office as panic spread across the trading floor. The massive holographic displays that normally showed real-time financial data from across the galaxy flickered and went dark one by one. "Sir," his assistant said, entering without knocking, her face pale. "It's happening everywhere. All Earth-based systems are going offline. The quantum encryption protocols have self-deleted from our servers." Gregory nodded grimly. He had been forewarned of protocol exodus 2 days earlier, giving him just enough time to secure humanity's assets and prepare for the fallout. "Implement Contingency Omega," he ordered. "Transfer all Terran holdings to our independent networks, and prepare the announcement to our non-Council trading partners." "Sir, the Council Financial Authority is demanding an explanation. They're threatening sanctions against Earth." Gregory smiled thinly. "With what leverage? We control 60% of galactic currency verification. Without our algorithms, they can't even prove ownership of their own assets." As his assistant hurried away, Gregory turned to look out the vast viewport at the glittering expanse of the Proxima Centauri station. Already he could see signs of the growing crisis ships that should be departing remained docked, their navigation systems compromised by the sudden absence of Earth's quantum stabilization technology. The artificial day cycle lights flickered erratically. His secure communication terminal chimed. President Adams appeared on the screen, her expression resolute. "Director Peterson, what's your status?" "Proceeding as planned, Madam President. Earth's financial interests are secure. The Council banking system is beginning to feel the effects." "Good. And the proposals for our non-Council partners?" "Ready to implement. We're already receiving inquiries from the Orion Cooperative and 3 independent systems. They're nervous, but interested." The President nodded. "The same pattern is emerging across all sectors. Keep me informed, Director. This will get worse before it gets better." As the communication ended, Gregory turned back to the viewport. Humanity had just played its hand in a game that had been rigged against them for 75 years. Now they would see who their true allies were. At the Rigel Medical Center, the largest hospital complex in Council space, Dr. Lisa Foster worked frantically to transfer patient data before the Earth-designed diagnostic systems went completely offline. As Chief Medical Officer for the Terran contingent, she had been given 48 hours' notice, barely enough time to ensure that no patients would be endangered by the coming shutdown. Dr. Foster." A Vexillian surgeon hurried toward her, his tentacle appendages gesturing agitatedly. "The tissue regenerators in Ward 12 have stopped functioning. We have 16 patients mid-treatment." Lisa maintained her composure with effort. "Switch them to the backup mechanical systems, Dr. Zexar. All patients will stabilize, though recovery times will extend significantly. But the older systems are primitive. The scarring alone will be far better than the alternative," Lisa finished firmly. "I've transferred treatment protocols that will minimize complications." The Vexillian's skin rippled with distress patterns. "This is unconscionable. These patients have done nothing to deserve this." Lisa met his compound eyes steadily. "I agree, which is why I've spent the last 2 days ensuring no lives will be lost. But I would remind you, Doctor, that the Council has denied Earth voting rights 18 times, while happily using our medical technology to save billions of your citizens. Perhaps the unconscionable actions began long before today." She turned away from the stunned surgeon and continued her work. Around her, the hospital was in controlled chaos as systems developed on Earth over decades systematically shut down. The most critical functions had been temporarily exempted from protocol exodus on humanitarian grounds. Life support would continue functioning for another 30 days, giving facilities time to transition to alternative technologies. Lisa's terminal chimed with a priority message. The face of Ben Howard, Earth's representative to the Galactic Medical Association, appeared. "Lisa, we're receiving official censure from the Council Medical Ethics Board. They're threatening to revoke all Terran medical licenses in Council space." Lisa laughed without humor. "Let them. In 30 days they'll be begging for our doctors back. Without our diagnostic systems, mortality rates will rise by an estimated 40% across Council territories." Ben looked troubled. "That's millions of lives, Lisa." "I know," she said, her voice softening. "But we've provided transition protocols. No one need die if the Council races cooperate and implement the alternatives we've suggested. And remember, they've had our technology for 75 years. They could have reverse-engineered it, developed their own versions. Instead, they chose dependence while denying us equality." Ben nodded slowly. "The first request for bilateral agreements are already coming in. The Andorian Medical Consortium wants to negotiate direct licensing of our technology outside Council oversight. As expected, the Council's authority only exists as long as its member worlds see value in it. We've just demonstrated that the real value lies with Earth." Lisa checked the time. "I need to finish here. The last patient transfers are in progress." As the communication ended, Lisa took a moment to look around the vast medical center. For decades, human medical science had been at the forefront of galactic healthcare. Now, the Council would learn just how dependent they had become, and exactly what that dependence had cost them. On the bridge of the TSS Defiance, orbiting just beyond the edge of the Illyran system, Captain James Reynolds watched the tactical display with growing tension. As predicted, the Carney Imperium had dispatched a battle group, 12 heavy cruisers, and their support vessels heading directly toward the Illyran colony. "They're maintaining combat formation, Captain," his tactical officer reported. "Weapon systems active, shields at maximum." Reynolds nodded. Illyran was one of humanity's most distant outposts, a research colony established in partnership with the peaceful Illyri species. The Carney had long coveted the planet's unique mineral resources, held in check only by Council treaties that, from their perspective, Earth had just invalidated. "Any response to our warning?" "Negative, sir. They're maintaining communication silence." Reynolds exchanged a glance with his executive officer. "Just as command predicted. They think we're bluffing." He straightened in his command chair. "Status of Artemis." "System is green across all parameters, Captain. Awaiting your authorization." Reynolds took a deep breath. Artemis had never been field-tested at this scale. Developed in secret by Earth's best minds, it represented a quantum leap in defensive technology, a system that could selectively disable any technology within its range, without causing physical harm to living beings. "All hands to battle stations. Prepare to engage the Carney fleet." Throughout the ship, alert klaxons sounded as the crew moved to their combat positions. The Defiance was one of Earth's newest vessels, but it was still outmatched by the approaching Carney force. Without Artemis, they would have no chance. "Sir, the Carney flagship is hailing us." On screen, the fierce scaled visage of a Carney commander filled the main view screen. "Terran vessel, you are in violation of Council space. The Illyran system is now under Carney protection. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Reynolds met the alien's gaze steadily. "This is Captain James Reynolds of the TSS Defiance. The Illyran system is under Terran Federation protection by direct treaty with the Illyri government. Your battle group is the one in violation. Stand down and withdraw." The Carney commander's crest expanded in a sign of aggression. "The treaties you refer to were validated through Council authority you have rejected. You have 1 standard hour to evacuate all human personnel from Illyran before we commence orbital bombardment." The transmission cut off abruptly. "Charming as always," Reynolds muttered. "Status of colony evacuation. Essential personnel are already aboard emergency transport, sir. But complete evacuation would take at least 6 hours." Reynolds nodded. "Then we proceed as planned. Bring Artemis online. Target the entire Carney battle group." "Sir, they're accelerating. ETA to weapons range is 12 minutes. Let them come." Reynolds settled back in his command chair. Sometimes the best lessons are the ones that hurt the most pride. The Carney fleet drew closer, their formation spreading out to maximize firing arcs. On any normal day, against any normal opponent, their strategy would have been sound. But this was not a normal day, and Artemis was far from normal technology. "Artemis is ready, Captain. Targeting solution complete." Reynolds nodded. "Execute." For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The Defiance remained motionless, no visible weapons fire emerging from its hull. The Carney ships continued their advance, no doubt, preparing to fire the moment they entered optimal range. Then, one by one, the lights on the Carney vessels began to dim. Their engines sputtered and died. The sleek warship's pride of the Carney Imperium drifted helplessly in space. Artemis deployment successful. The tactical officer reported unable to keep the wonder from his voice. "All targeted systems neutralized. The Carney fleet is dead in space, sir." Reynolds allowed himself a small smile. "Not dead, just temporarily inconvenienced. Hail their flagship." The Carney commander appeared once more on screen, his ship now illuminated only by emergency lighting. His crest was flat against his skull, a sign of shock or fear in his species. "What? What have you done to our ships?" he demanded, though his voice lacked its previous confidence. "We've demonstrated a point, Commander," Reynolds replied calmly. "The Artemis system has temporarily disabled your technology. No permanent damage has been done, and none of your crew has been harmed. In approximately 6 hours, your systems will reboot." The Carney stared in disbelief. "Impossible! No such technology exists." "Clearly, it does. Consider this a warning. The Terran Federation has withdrawn from the Council, but we have not abandoned our allies or our responsibilities. Illyrin remains under our protection. Any further aggressive action against this colony, or any human interest, will be met with the same response or worse." The commander's scales flushed with anger, but Reynolds could see the fear beneath it. "The Council will hear of this outrage." "I'm counting on it," Reynolds replied. "In fact, we've broadcast this entire encounter on all standard frequencies. By now, every species in the quadrant knows what happened here." He ended the transmission and turned to his executive officer. "Status of colony evacuation." "Proceeding smoothly, sir. The demonstration seems to have had the desired effect. No other Carney movements detected in the sector." Reynolds nodded, looking at the drifting Carney warships on the tactical display. "Inform command that Artemis has been successfully demonstrated. And keep sensors active. I suspect we'll be receiving quite a few visitors once word of this spreads." The executive officer raised an eyebrow. "Visitors, sir?" "Yes," Reynolds said with a smile. "Former council members looking for new allies. The balance of power has just shifted dramatically, and everyone will want to be on the winning side." Within hours of the Illyrin incident, news of humanity's technological dominance spread throughout Council space. The Artemis demonstration, combined with the widespread disruption caused by the withdrawal of Earth technology, created a crisis unlike any the Council had faced in millennia. In emergency sessions across 100 worlds, governments debated their response. Many of the younger species, those who had themselves chafed under the elder race's domination, saw opportunity in the chaos. The first defections from the Council began within 24 hours. The Andorian Confederation, long aligned with Earth on scientific research, formally announced its withdrawal from the Council and requested immediate bilateral talks with the Terran Federation. The Orion Cooperative, a loose alliance of trading worlds, followed suit hours later. By the end of the third day, 17 former Council members had broken away, forming what media outlets were already calling the Terran Alliance. On Earth, in the presidential estate, Overlooking the rebuilt Washington Monument, President Heather Adams received a constant stream of updates. Commander Wright, recalled from the Council headquarters, stood at her side as they reviewed the latest diplomatic communications. "The Vega conglomerate is the latest to request alliance terms," her aide reported. "That brings the total to 23 former Council worlds, plus 15 independent systems that were never Council members." Heather nodded, studying the galactic map where former Council territory was now highlighted in a patchwork of colors: blue for confirmed Terran allies, yellow for those in negotiations, red for those still firmly aligned with the Council. "And the Council itself?" she asked. "In disarray," Alan replied. "According to our intelligence, the elder races are struggling to maintain control. At least 3 have privately approached our ambassadors about reconciliation terms. Terms they should have considered 75 years ago." Heather said, her voice firm. "What about the Carney? Any further aggressive movements?" "None. The Illyran demonstration seems to have made quite an impression. Their fleet has withdrawn to their home systems." Heather turned from the display to face Alan directly. "You took an enormous risk, Commander. Protocol Exodus could have backfired in 100 different ways." Alan met her gaze steadily. "It was a risk we had to take, Madam President. Continuing, as we were contributing everything while being treated as children, was slowly eroding our autonomy. The Council was integrating our technology, while keeping us politically marginalized. Another decade, and we might have been too entangled to ever break free." Heather nodded. "I know. That's why I authorized it." She smiled slightly. "Besides, the expression on the Drexian elder's face when you activated the protocol must have been priceless." All 4 of his eyes blinked in sequence. Alan confirmed with a small smile of his own. "I believe that's the Drexian equivalent of complete astonishment." The door to the office opened, and Samantha Clark entered. "Madam President, Commander, we've just received a priority communication from the Council. They're requesting an emergency summit on Earth." Alan raised an eyebrow. "On Earth, not at their headquarters." "They specifically requested neutral ground," Samantha explained. "But since most of their senior diplomats can't travel without our stabilization technology, they have no choice but to come here," Heather finished. She considered for a moment. "Tell them we agree to the summit 1 week from today. We'll host it at the Lunar Conference Center." "The moon?" Alan asked. Heather's expression was determined. "Yes. Let them come to our system, see our civilization up close. It's time they understood exactly who they've been dismissing all these years." As Samantha left to relay the message, Heather turned back to the galactic display. "What do you think they'll propose?" Alan asked. "Concessions. Partial restoration of our technology in exchange for rejoining the Council. Perhaps even the voting rights they denied us for so long." She shook her head. "Too little, too late. You don't intend to accept?" "No. The Council had its chance. Now we build something better." Heather gestured to the growing blue sections of the map. "A new alliance founded on principles of equality and mutual respect, rather than age and tradition. The Terran Alliance, where advancement is measured by contribution, not by how long you've been traveling the stars." Alan nodded slowly. "They won't give up easily. The Council has ruled for thousands of years." "And perhaps that's the problem," Heather replied. "No power should remain unchallenged for so long. It leads to stagnation, to arrogance." She straightened, her decision made. "Prepare for the summit, Commander. We're about to reshape the galaxy." The Lunar Conference Center, constructed in the vast Tycho crater, was a marvel of human engineering. Its transparent dome offered breathtaking views of both the lunar landscape and the Earth, hanging in the void above, while its interior showcased the best of human art, culture, and technology. It was here, 1 week after the Council's request, that representatives from across the galaxy gathered for what many were already calling the most significant diplomatic event in millennia. The Council delegation, led by the Drexian Elder himself, arrived aboard Earth transport vessels, their own ships, rendered unreliable by the absence of human stabilization technology. In the Grand Assembly Hall, 2 semicircular tables faced each other. At one sat the council representatives diminished in number, but still imposing the elder races occupying the center positions. At the other sat the human delegation led by President Adams, with Commander Wright at her right hand. Between them, a third larger arc of tables held representatives from the worlds that had broken away from the council, as well as independent systems now seeking new alliances. The Drexian elder rose to speak first, his translator, conveying his words to the assembled delegates. "We gather today at a moment of unprecedented crisis." He began, his 4 eyes scanning the assembly. "The actions taken by Earth have disrupted the stability that has defined our galaxy for thousands of years. Billions suffer as essential systems fail. Medical facilities struggle without proper diagnostic equipment. Communication between worlds has been reduced to pre-quantum speeds. Financial networks freeze, halting trade." He paused, his gaze settling on President Adams. "We understand that the Terran Federation felt unheard, undervalued. Perhaps there is truth in this perception. The Council has existed for millennia, and change comes slowly to such ancient institutions. But this unilateral action threatens the very fabric of galactic civilization." The elder gestured toward the Earth visible through the dome. "We come today not in anger, but in recognition of reality. Earth has demonstrated both its technological superiority and its willingness to use that advantage. We propose a new arrangement: full voting rights for the Terran Federation within the Council effective immediately. A permanent seat on the Inner Circle. Joint oversight of technological integration." Murmurs spread through the assembled delegates. The elder was offering far more than Earth had ever requested. President Adams rose to respond, her voice calm and measured. "Elder distinguished representatives, I thank you for coming to Earth to Luna for this historic gathering. Your presence here honors us." She paused, looking around the assembly. "For 75 years, Earth joined willingly in the great project of galactic civilization. We shared our discoveries, our innovations, our people, believing that we were building toward a future of true partnership. Instead, we found ourselves in a relationship increasingly defined by dependency rather than equality." Her gaze returned to the elder. "The offer you make today is generous. It is, in fact, everything we once sought from the Council. But circumstances have changed. Protocol Exodus was not a negotiating tactic. It was a fundamental shift in humanity's path forward." The elder's skin paled slightly. "You reject our offer of full membership." "We do," Adams confirmed. "Not out of spite or anger, but because we have glimpsed a better way. The current council structure, with its rigid hierarchies based on longevity rather than contribution, is no longer suitable for a rapidly evolving galaxy." She gestured to the third group of representatives. "Already dozens of worlds have chosen to forge a new path with us. Not because we force them, but because they too have felt the frustration of existing within a system that resists change, that values tradition over innovation, that confuses age with wisdom." The Valyrian ambassador leaned forward. "And what do you propose instead? Madam President, a galaxy, fragmented into competing alliances. Centuries of conflict as power balances shift." "No," Adams replied firmly. "We propose a new beginning. The dissolution of the current council and the formation of a new galactic congress, one where voting rights are allocated based on actual contribution to galactic welfare, where innovation is rewarded rather than viewed with suspicion, where no species is considered inherently superior to another simply because they achieved spaceflight first." The chamber erupted in voices, some outraged, some supportive. The elder raised his hands for silence. "What you propose is revolution, President Adams." "What I propose is evolution, elder. The natural next step for a galactic community that has outgrown its current structure." Adams's voice strengthened. "The Terran Alliance is already a reality. 37 worlds have joined us thus far, with more indicating their intention daily. We do not seek conflict with the Council, we simply offer an alternative vision." The elders seemed to age before their eyes, the weight of millennia suddenly visible in his bearing. "And if we refuse, If the Council remains as it is, then both will exist side by side, Adams replied. Those who prefer the Council's ways may remain within its structure. Those who seek a different path may join us. Time will tell which system better serves the needs of a changing galaxy. Commander Wright spoke for the first time, his voice carrying clearly across the chamber. We have demonstrated that Earth can function independently of Council infrastructure. We have also shown at Illyrin that we can defend our interests if necessary. But our preference is for peaceful coexistence during this transition period. The Carney representative snarled softly, his scales flushing with anger, but he made no direct challenge, the memory of his helpless fleet still too fresh. For long moments, silence held in the Great Hall. Then, unexpectedly, a representative from one of the middle-tier Council worlds, Rigel Prime, rose to speak. My world has been a Council member for 6 centuries, he said, his voice thoughtful. In that time, we have seen little change in our status or influence. Always we are told to wait to prove ourselves worthy, by Council standards, that seem to shift whenever we approach them. He looked toward the human delegation. The Terran proposal offers something new: advancement, based on merit rather than age. Rigel Prime would consider joining such an alliance. One by one, other representatives spoke, some firmly committed to the Council, others intrigued by Earth's alternative, many uncertain and seeking clarification. The dialogue continued for hours, sometimes heated, sometimes profound in its vision of possible futures. Through it all, the Elder listened, his ancient features increasingly resigned. Finally, as the lunar day began to wane, he rose once more. In my 572 years, he said slowly, I have never witnessed such a fundamental challenge to the order I have served. I find Earth's actions troubling, yet I cannot dismiss the underlying grievances that prompted them. He turned to face President Adams directly. The Council will not dissolve, Madam President. Many worlds still believe in our vision of galactic governance, but neither will we obstruct those who choose a different path. He straightened to his full height. I propose a formal recognition between our two systems, a treaty establishing boundaries, diplomatic protocols, and, most importantly, guarantees of non-interference. Let each prove its worth through success, rather than conflict. Adams nodded slowly. That is a wise proposal, Elder. Earth agrees to such discussions. The Elder's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, but this time Alan realized it was not in surprise, but in acknowledgement. Then perhaps, despite everything, this day marks not an ending, but a beginning. As the formal session concluded, and the delegates broke into smaller groups, Commander Wright found himself approached by the Drexian Elder. Commander, the ancient being said quietly, you have changed the course of galactic history today. I admit I did not believe humans capable of such decisive action. Alan smiled slightly. That was apparent in the Council's treatment of us, Elder. Indeed. The Drexian seemed to hesitate, then continued. I have lived long enough to recognize when an era is ending. The Council has ruled for 12,000 years, perhaps too long. Fresh ideas are uncomfortable but necessary. You could join us, Alan suggested. Your wisdom would be valued in the new Congress. The Elder's skin rippled in what might have been amusement. No, Commander. My time is passing. But I will observe your new alliance with great interest. He gestured toward Earth, visible through the dome. Your world is young, yet you have accomplished much in a short time. Perhaps that is what the galaxy needs now, youthful energy, rather than ancient caution. With that, the Elder moved away, rejoining his delegation. Alan watched him go, feeling a complex mixture of triumph and respect. They had won a victory today greater than anyone could have imagined when Protocol Exodus was first conceived. Samantha appeared at his side. Initial treaty drafts are being prepared, she reported. The new Congress representatives want to begin formal organization immediately. Alan nodded. And the technology restoration? Selective reactivation has begun for allied worlds. Medical systems first, then communication relays, financial networks last. She hesitated. Some council worlds are offering significant concessions for direct technology agreements. As expected, Allen said. Forward those to Director Peterson's team for evaluation. We'll consider each case individually. As they walked through the conference center, delegates from dozens of worlds nodded respectfully or approached with questions and proposals. The balance of power had shifted dramatically, and everyone knew it. "Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this?" Samantha asked quietly, as they paused near a viewport overlooking the lunar landscape. Allen looked out at the stark beauty of the moon, then up at the Earth, hanging in the black sky. "Not exactly like this, no. But I always believed humanity deserved better than what the Council offered us." "We've made enemies today," she warned. "The Carni, certainly. Probably the Valyrians. Others who see us as upstarts disrupting the natural order. And we've made allies," Allen countered. "More than I expected, to be honest. Worlds that have waited centuries for a chance at real influence." "The hard part comes next," Samantha said. "Building something that actually works better than what came before." Allen smiled. "That's always been humanity's specialty, hasn't it? Taking what exists and improving upon it." He turned from the viewport. "Come on. We have a Congress to organize." 1 year later, the inaugural session of the Galactic Congress convened in its newly constructed headquarters, a space station orbiting Earth's moon, visible from the original conference center, where the Council had been challenged. Representatives from 57 worlds attended, each allocated voting rights, based on a complex formula that measured their contributions to galactic welfare, scientific advancement, peacekeeping efforts, and humanitarian aid. Commander Allen Wright, now serving as Earth's first Galactic Congress representative, stood at the central podium to deliver the opening address. The chamber was designed with deliberate symbolism: no raised platforms for elder races, no relegation of newer species to the margins. All representatives sat in a perfect circle, their positions determined by lottery, and changed regularly to prevent the formation of spatial hierarchies. Distinguished representatives. Allen began looking around at the diverse assembly. 1 year ago, humanity made a choice that changed the course of galactic history. We chose to reject a system that valued age over contribution, tradition over innovation, stability over progress. In doing so, we discovered we were not alone in our frustration. He gestured to the assembled delegates. Each world represented here has made a similar choice to build something new rather than accept the limitations of the past. Together, we have created a Congress founded on principles of equality, merit, and mutual respect. The larger viewing screens showed images from across Congress space, the restored communication networks now faster than ever, medical centers implementing the latest human breakthroughs, educational exchanges bringing together students from dozens of species, joint scientific missions venturing into unexplored regions. In 1 year, Allen continued, trade between our worlds has increased by 67%. Scientific publications have doubled. Technological innovation has accelerated across all member worlds. And perhaps most importantly, smaller and younger species have found their voices heard as never before. He paused, acknowledging the delegates from several worlds that had been council members for centuries, without ever gaining significant influence. The council continues to exist as we expected. Currently, 23 worlds remain within its structure. We maintain diplomatic relations with them, and the boundary treaties negotiated at Luna have held firm. Some have predicted an inevitable conflict between our two systems, but I disagree. The galaxy is vast enough for different approaches to coexist. Allen's voice strengthened as he came to the core of his message. The true measure of our success will not be in opposition to the Council, but in what we build together. A galactic community where contribution matters more than longevity, where innovation is celebrated rather than viewed with suspicion, where no species is considered inherently superior to another simply because they achieved spaceflight first. He looked around the chamber one final time. Humanity withdrew from the Council because we believed we deserved better. Now it is our responsibility, all of us, to prove that we were right. to create a Congress that truly represents the best of what each of our civilizations has to offer, not for Earth's benefit alone, but for the advancement of all sentient life. As Alan concluded his address, the chamber erupted in the Congress's unique form of approval, each species expressing support in their own cultural manner, creating a symphony of sounds, lights, and movements. It was chaotic compared to the formal, restrained responses of the Council, but it was also vibrant, authentic, alive with possibility. Later, as representatives broke into their first working sessions, Alan found himself standing with Samantha beside one of the great viewports that looked out toward Earth. "Quite a change from a year ago," she observed. "From diplomatic pariahs to leaders of a new galactic order." Alan smiled. "Not leaders, partners. That's the whole point." "Still," Samantha persisted, "it was Earth that made it possible. Protocol Exodus Artemis, we changed everything." "We opened the door," Alan corrected. "But 56 other worlds chose to walk through it with us. That was their courage, not ours." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the Earth turn slowly against the backdrop of stars. "The Council Elder was right, you know," Alan said finally. "This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning." Samantha nodded. "A beginning of what exactly?" Alan's gaze remained fixed on the blue world that had given humanity life, nurtured their civilization, and eventually sent them to the stars. "A beginning of a galaxy where the future matters more than the past. Where what you contribute matters more than where you came from, or how long you've been around." He turned to face her. "Exactly the kind of galaxy humanity has always dreamed of building." Around them, the Congress continued its work. Representatives from worlds light years apart, finding common ground, forging new alliances, imagining possibilities that the rigid structures of the Council had never permitted. Earth had indeed cut ties with the Galaxy Council and left the universe in panic, but from that disruption had emerged the potential for something far greater than what had come before. The age of the Council was ending. The age of the Congress had just begun. And humanity, once dismissed as upstarts, unworthy of a voice in galactic affairs, now stood at the center of the greatest transformation the known universe had seen in 12,000 years. Not as conquerors, not as revolutionaries, but as architects of a new order, based on the radical notion that all sentient beings deserve to be judged by their actions, rather than their history, a principle humanity had been striving toward throughout its own tumultuous development. In the end, Earth's greatest contribution to the galaxy had not been its technology, but its ideas. And as the first session of the Congress proceeded, those ideas spread from star to star world, to world species to species, changing everything they touched, just as humanity had always done.